Hi, everybody. I'm Jenny. I'm a life coach. And today I'm going to talk about how INFJs find their dream job. And the short answer is that INFJs have to find their dream job just through doing, through the act of doing. We learn through the act of doing because INFJs really are not good at reading ourselves. We're better at reading other people. And it's very hard for us to predict if we're going to like a specific job until we're actually just in it, feeling the energy. So the short answer is you just have to keep job hopping until you find something that you like. Um, Another problem with job hunting for INFJs is that it's going to be the unseen things that make it a good job or not. It's not going to be the things that are listed in the job description, the obvious things. It's going to be more like the company culture. It's going to be more like if they allow for a healthy work-life balance. Um, who do you have to answer to? Are they more of a leader follower type of person, or do they lead in a more collaborative way? And so that's another difficulty INFJs have with job hunting is none of those things are really listed in the job description. If you make mistakes, do they treat that like a learning opportunity, or does that put you at risk of losing your job? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. Another problem with most jobs is that we absorb everyone around us. So if we're around anyone who is in any kind of emotional turmoil, we're going to absorb that. We're going to feel it too. And so it's very, very hard for us to work around other people, especially people with messy energy. They might not be bad people, but they still might have messy energy. Um, this is why I love that I work at home with my cat. His energy does not affect me too much. Because we're so sensitive, we need a lot of control over our environment. When we socialize, we have very sensitive nervous systems. We're sensitive to the temperature. We're sensitive to the lighting. We're sensitive to the noises. And when we don't have control over those things, we're much more likely to be distracted. We're much more likely to be drained. INFJs also need um, a lot of scene disruption to actually stay focused. INFJs can really only stay focused for about an hour at a time. We are actually more productive if we can take lots of breaks, work for an hour, take a break, work for an hour, take a break. And if we're in a workplace that doesn't really allow for that, we're actually likely to be less productive. We need kind of those pattern interrupts. We also have a lot of unseen skills. Our number one superpower is intuition, which is an unseen skill. We are good at connecting dots, whereas other people might need those dots connected very literally. We can make jumps. We can use critical thinking to make jumps from one point to another. We can fill in gaps. We can make inferences. And it's very hard to communicate those things on a resume. So it's very hard to find places where we are valued for our gifts. A lot of jobs are not very supportive of good self-care. And the irony is that INFJs are natural psychologists, but mental health jobs especially are not supportive of good self-care. In a lot of cases, I worked at a mental health facility, a residential facility for teenage girls. Those employees were completely overworked. And we're meant to be mentors to these teenage girls, right? Yet we're not given the tools and the space to take care of our own mental health. So how are we supposed to be mentors to these teenage girls who have extremely fragile nervous systems to keep people like that calm, people with a lot of trauma? Your nervous system needs to be very well managed, and you need a lot of good self-care in order to do that. So there's a lot of hypocrisy in jobs too, where they say they support work-life balance in theory, but in practice, they really don't. INFJs are more likely to work at low-paying jobs because we see money as evil. We see people who have money as probably immoral. They probably had to do immoral things to get it. We're looking at how all the people in the world are struggling. We don't think it's fair for us to have money when other people do not. But one thing I've always struggled with is I've always struggled to find volunteer jobs that I like and that I can stick with. And I think the reason is because we're already giving so much. We're already giving so much to our jobs, to the people that we care about. We're already over giving in so many other areas. Volunteering always kind of just felt like this extra burden to me. And I think that's why, is because I was over giving in all these other places. And if we're working jobs that aren't paying what we worth, we're basically already doing community service. And we don't really see it that way. But if you're working a job where you're underpaid, you're basically already doing community service. You don't need to then go and do more community service. So we do have trouble demanding what we're worth. It's interesting because there's charts out there that show how much different personality types make, and there's other charts that show how gifted certain personality types are, and the introverted intuitives are at the top of the gifted chart, but the intuitive feelers are way down at the bottom of the earnings chart. And if you think about it, that's not really fair, right? If you're gifted, why are you making the least amount of money? We deserve to get paid what we're worth. If we're gifted, we deserve to get paid for those gifts. Okay. We also want our work to be meaningful. It's pretty common that censors, this is less often a requirement for censors looking for jobs. Censors are more satisfied working a job that allows them to focus on what they care about outside of work. Censors are okay finding their fulfillment outside of work. Intuitives, and especially intuitive feelers, want to get our fulfillment through our work. We need our work to be meaningful. The other problem is, we're good at so many things. We're chameleons, and that means we can be good at a lot of things, but none of those things are things that we will enjoy if we're doing them 8 hours a day. If we love to write, we're not going to love writing anymore if we're doing it 8 hours a day. If we love to draw, we're not going to love drawing anymore if we have to do it 8 hours a day. There's really no job on the planet that we're going to like if we have to do it 8 hours a day. So sometimes maybe you'll be able to find a job with enough variety that it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing for 8 hours a day, but we are very intellectually gifted and we need a lot of stimulation, and it's hard to get stimulation when you're doing the same thing for 8 hours a day. No one ever really wanted to work 8 hours a day, right? We used to do it anyway because working 8 hours a day used to mean that you could afford a house and you could afford a family. If you look at The Simpsons, when The Simpsons started, that was realistic. It was realistic to have one parent who was working, one parent who was stay at home to afford a house and raise a family. And that is no longer realistic. Okay. So people never have enjoyed working for other people, but the rewards used to be greater, and the rewards are not as attainable anymore. So it's hard for us to stay motivated because we see through the masks, we see through the veils, we see through the promises, we see this, okay? We see how it's not healthy or sustainable. We're also, again, intelligent, and we're usually getting bossed around by less intelligent people. We're constantly having to prove things that we know already. And because we're intuitive and because we can fill in the blanks, it's impossible to prove how we filled in that blank. Because if we can see this point and we can see this point, we understand that that must mean that there's another point that's connecting these points together. And it's impossible to explain how we know that there's this missing point that would have to be there in order for these other 2 points to be connected. And so we're constantly having to try and fail, usually, to explain things we know to people who are less intelligent than us. Usually the people in power are not as intelligent because they just have a different value system than we do. It's always the people who are in power that shouldn't be, and it's always the people who should be in power that don't want power because they, that don't want power because they see what people in power act like. Okay. We're humble to a fault. We're uncomfortable asking for raises. We're uncomfortable advocating for ourselves. We're humble to a fault. We aren't good at acting on the spot. Like if you're in a meeting and someone asks you a question, we are better when we can reflect on the answer and not when we have to answer someone right on the spot. And so we can seem a lot less intelligent than we are just because we need that reflection time to really come up with a good answer. We're also not big on networking because that's more of an extrovert thing. And that means we're less lucky. Extroverts are notoriously more lucky than introverts. And that's just because they expose themselves to more opportunities. They're exposing themselves to more risk and more chances to fail, but they're also exposing themselves to more opportunities and chances to succeed. So extroverts are luckier just out of the probability, just because they're putting themselves out there more. So we're less likely to succeed and know the right people and things like that, just because we're networking less because we're introverts. And because we're chameleons, there's a lot of things that we're good at, tons of things that we're good at, but there's not a lot we're happy at. So a lot of us are in jobs that we're actually very good at, but we're just not happy. It's not fulfilling to us. And these are all common problems with INFJs in their jobs. So what can we do about it? There's a term called codependence, which usually applies to relationships, but I actually think INFJs are also codependent with their jobs. And that means that we put our jobs ahead of our needs, our jobs needs in front of our needs. In relationships, that's where you're putting your partner's needs in front of your needs. You're kind of this martyr, you're sacrificing yourself for the good of someone else. And so we have to kind of learn to put ourselves first, which is very hard for us. And part of that is just quitting a bad job sooner. We are overly loyal to these jobs. We stay at bad jobs too long. And so one thing that we need to do is to is to quit bad jobs sooner. The more jobs you work, the more likely you're going to find one that you like. And the faster you quit those jobs that you don't like, the faster you're going to get to one that you do like. I worked 4 jobs one year because I just kind of adopted this mindset and I said, I'm just going to keep applying to jobs. I'm not going to stop until I find one that I like. So this is very hard for us because we feel a lot of loyalty to our jobs. We can feel very guilty. We feel very guilty quitting usually. So you really, really, really have to work at putting yourself first, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable. So you don't need to quit your job right away, but you can practice not feeling guilty to keep looking for something better while you're working that job, okay? We don't have to make it a second job to find a new job. We can just casually look, if you have a few minutes, a couple times a day, you can just go and check the job boards. It doesn't have to be this all-consuming must get done task. You can just casually look, see if there's something better that you might want to try. You don't have to wait for an arbitrary passage of time. There's this idea that you shouldn't leave your job until you've been there for at least a year. That way of thinking, I think, is pretty outdated now. And it's okay to quit jobs faster. You don't have to stay and be miserable and wait for your 1 year mark in order to leave your job. I know some INFJs and even other personality types who have started unions at their job because they wanted more fair treatment. There's labor unions. Where an organizer will come talk to you and tell you, the steps that you need to take to do that. Google just, if that's something you're interested in, just start Googling information about unions. If you can afford to work part-time, that's also a good strategy. Keep working part-time jobs until you find something that you like, and then you can do the one that you like full-time. But that way you have more time and more energy to spend on your own projects or on finding a job that you actually do like if you're working part-time. If you have a mental health diagnosis, or if you think you qualify for a mental health diagnosis, that means you can ask for accommodations. If you go and get your diagnosis, you can ask for accommodations at your job. I think this is for companies with 50 or more employees, but you can ask for things like a more flexible schedule. You can ask to work from home. This is in the US. There's laws that protect people with disabilities. And so a mental health diagnosis falls under that umbrella. It's okay to embellish your resume. I think INFJs are one of the last people who are going to lie on their resume, but it's okay to embellish it a little bit. We're also really fast learners. So if somebody worked at a company, for 5 years, if we work at a company 1 year, we've probably learned 5 years worth of experience. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but that's just to illustrate what I mean. The whole point of saying how long you worked at a company on a resume is to show how much experience you have. And so if, because you're gifted, you've acquired more experience in a shorter amount of time, just think about what you need to do to illustrate that. You're embellishing it in a way that illustrates a truth in that way, because 1 year doesn't really communicate the level of experience that you've probably absorbed in that amount of time. And I'm not saying specifically to embellish how long you were somewhere, but just give yourself a little bit of freedom to think about, what is going to communicate the experience that I actually have the best. Okay. You can also use artificial intelligence to your advantage. I know a lot of creatives are very wary of artificial intelligence, but I think artificial intelligence is just like money. It can be good, it can be bad. It's all about how you use it. If you're using it to get a better job for yourself, that's using AI for good. There's programs that will help you write your cover letters, programs that will help you write your resumes. If you have to, sometimes you have to apply to hundreds of jobs to get an interview. And it's good to craft your resume and your cover letters to match the keywords in those job postings. It's not humanly possible to do that manually hundreds of times. It's just not. So there's AI programs that can help you. Just pop in the job description. It'll look at your resume and it will help you figure out what you need to highlight. It'll even do it for you. Word things in a way that highlights what experience you have that best match the job description. Okay. You can also start your business on the side. If you do that, you can start writing off your business expenses when you file your taxes. Any money that you spend on your business, you can start writing off when you file taxes. That means you'll get more tax money back. But the benefit of that is you're still working your job. You still have your health insurance through your job. So that's going to save you a lot of expenses that you would normally have. If you were starting your own business, you'd have to buy your own health insurance. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds for a period of time. All this to say, there are good jobs out there. There are INFJs who are happy with their jobs. It's difficult to find and to do. I believe that the best job for INFJs is not found, but is created. It's created, it's custom to you. It's your own business that is customized to your needs and your specific strengths. I know a lot of solopreneurs, and the biggest problem I see with solopreneurs is that they're burning out. And that's because they're approaching business from a left-brained masculine energy point of view. And there is another way to run business. You can run your business from a right-brained feminine energy point of view. Whether you're a man or a woman, this has nothing to do with gender. It's just about the way that you run your business, the way you think about your business, the way you manage your energy. And so I am launching a course coming up on the art of spiritual solopreneurship. And we're going to talk about how to create a business that's more friendly to our energy levels and our nervous systems, and that feels good, that feels like fun and not like a job. So I'm really excited about it. If you want more information, sign up for my newsletter. The link is jennydobson.com/newsletter, and you'll get all the information there. It's launching soon. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll be back soon. Bye.